So, what is your name?
Molly Jarosakarin.
Okay, and where were you born?
I was born in Syracuse, New York, which is up in the middle of the state.
All right, and what does your family look like?
Okay, so I have my mom. I have my sister who's in Nashville. My mom's here in Georgia, but we all grew up in New York. And then I have my husband and my 2 kids at home.
All right, so now I'm going to ask you like 3 little questions. So, okay, did your child show any signs of separation or stranger anxiety while they were an infant? Describe what your child would do when strangers were in the room with them.
Yes. So my oldest was the worst with this. So when she was like 6 months old to about the age of probably 10 or so months, she really did not like when other people would hold her, for example, or like if we left her. So that was really hard, like especially with daycare and stuff. So she was the one that had the most separation anxiety. She was also the worst sleeper at night. And I find like with my kids, teaching them different, like how to sleep differently has been like a huge thing. I thought all kids would be like kind of the same. My youngest is like she was the better sleeper as a child. But now it's kind of flip-flop. My oldest now is really content being in her own space at night because we use more of like the cry it out method, which I hated. I hated every moment of it with her because it was more effective. My youngest, we didn't have to do that, but now at nighttime, she has more separation anxiety at night than my oldest does. So now it's kind of flip-flop. My youngest now is the one that sometimes is like, I want to come sleep with you, which, and to be honest, that was a boundary that my husband and I kind of set when we were parents. We were like, we really don't want the kids sleeping in bed because A, it's not really safe, but B, it's also like kind of like our space, and it's not, I don't know. I know like that's a very controversial like topic for mothers because sometimes they're like, well, your baby wants you, you should, but like I also felt really strongly in like being myself still and like having my own space. So that was a long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's fine. It's just fine. All right, and describe the first few times you dropped your child off for daycare. What was your child's reaction when you left? What was their reaction when you returned?
Okay, I'll be honest, I don't really remember.
Okay.
I do remember my youngest. My oldest, she was so young and that was so long ago, but so my youngest went when she was 6 months old, and I'm sure she was upset for like the first hour or whatever. I know our daycare teacher, she's amazing, and she's an at-home daycare, so it's a little bit smaller, and now she's almost like part of our family.
Yeah.
So like we're very close with her. She comes over for the kids' birthdays, and we will keep in contact with her afterwards. So she's been sort of like a very stable person in their life. But I'm sure like the first couple of times, I know especially with my youngest, when she was dropped off, I actually went for the whole day with her over to Miss Diana's house because it was summertime. And we went kind of like tried it out and just like we tried to kind of like wean her off of it. But my oldest, we didn't have that luxury because it was in the middle of January. So, and she was our first. So it wasn't fun though. It wasn't a fun experience for me. I was probably really upset about it if I remember correctly. And when we come back, I still love going to get my kids from school and daycare. Like it's the best day, part of my day. But yeah.
And what is the most valuable lesson you can share about raising a child to be happy and healthy?
Ooh, this is tough because I find myself to be like not a perfect parent. I'm sure every mom thinks that's like, right? We're always just like trying our best, and I know sometimes like I struggle with emotional control and I try to model it for them, but then like you're really tired during the week, it's a Wednesday, they're fighting bedtime or it's hard to lose, to keep your control. But my husband's really good at it. I think that's the key though to raising good, kids who are happy and healthy, and is trying to keep your control where you can. Right? I also kind of come from a perspective where I don't always think gentle parenting is always the best too. I think like we don't hit or spank our kids, but I think sometimes it's important to elicit serious responses, you know, to things, because I think sometimes that can get too fluffy. So, I mean, I'm not saying like authoritative parenting necessarily, but, you know, I think sometimes, you know, if there's serious situations and things, and if you could at least just tell them why you got frustrated, even if it's after the fact, I feel like that's important. And just, you know, I think a big thing too is including them in a lot of aspects of your life. So they see you being a real person and they get included and they come places with you. And but I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know that they're sleeping early on or being separated early on. I don't know that really affected their happiness at all, if that makes sense. I think it's part of our culture here in the United States now to have working moms. So I think we just sort of set them up for what our family is going to be. You know, I'm always going to be working, Dad's always going to be working. But I don't think there's a right or wrong way, and I don't think there's anything wrong with moms that stay at home either. It's a job that I definitely would have a hard time doing. It's a very tough job. So I don't know the answer, but
yeah, that's fine.
I think just including them and like I said, when you lose your cool, as long as you tell them why, you know, or I think there's a big benefit of learning to apologize too, even as a parent, and it kind of models those situations for them later on. So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, it was. Thank you, Coach Jay.
Okay, I hope that was...
Okay, so what's your name?
Miss Mary Young.
All right, and where were you born?
I was born in Florida.
Okay, and what does your family look like? Like parents, siblings, extended family?
I have one mom, 2 brothers, and a great aunt. Yeah.
Okay, and all right, so now I'm gonna ask you like 4 other questions. And all right, so have you had any important rite of passage in your life?
Yes, I turned 18.
Okay, and okay. So, thinking about the aspects of adolescent egocentrism, such as imaginary audience and personal fable, how do you see this take place at Spraberry High School? Do you think that it applies to you too? How so?
Okay, so at Spraberry, some kids like in the cafeteria will go throw stuff if their friends are around them. It's almost like they try to like do riskier behavior because people are watching them, and even when people aren't, they still might like throw stuff just because they think somebody is. And this does pertain to me. Like when I'm driving a car and I have a friend, or like I think somebody, like, you know, maybe someone's watching me, whatever, sometimes I make sharper turns, or like I try to act a little cooler. Yeah.
Okay. So, considering Stanley Hall's storm and stress idea of adolescence, teens tend to have conflict with parents, mood disruptions, and perform risky behavior. Is this something you have experienced? Why do you think this happens at this time of life?
Yes, this is definitely something I've experienced, and I think this happens mostly because of puberty.
Okay. And considering Margaret Mead's thoughts on adolescence, why might Samoan teens have different experiences than American teens and adolescents? Has striving for independence created conflict between you and the adults in your life? Describe this for me.
Okay, so for the first part, Samoan teens, they were raised with more strict gender rules. It's kind of like, as a woman, you should go do this, this, and this, and as a man, you should do this, this, and this. And so they don't have any like stress in their life to figure out what they need to be. And then it's okay, I get just like confidence. And then for us American teens, we're more stressed because, you know, we have to pick our own, you know, pick our own thing. We have to actually strive for stuff. Our parents are always like, do this, 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 and that. And striving for independence. Sorry. Striving for independence. Let me think. Hold up. And yeah, striving for independence has created conflict between me and other adults, because sometimes I want to do stuff. Like, for instance, maybe do an assignment in a different class that's not for that class. Like maybe filling out a scholarship or filling out a college application, and my teacher will say, no, don't do that. Only work on the work in my class. And sometimes it feels a little bit controlling. Okay.
All right. What is your name?
Coach White,
And where were you born?
Indiana.
Okay, and what does your family look like?
As far as like what? What do you mean?
Like, what is it like? Who does it consist of? Like,
Oh, I have my mom and my dad who have been married like 50 something years. I have an older sister who's married with 4 boys. I have a younger brother that's married with 3 kids. I have my daughter and grandson, grandbaby, little Walker. He's awesome.
all right, yeah, okay. So now I'm gonna ask you like 4 questions, okay? So, have you noticed a decrease in muscular strength, reaction time, and sensory abilities as you've gotten older? What is something that has changed for you?
I mean, yeah, definitely not a spring chicken. I can't keep up with the 16-year-olds out there anymore on the tennis courts, but I still feel like for my age, I still move pretty good. But there's definitely been a decline in my athletic abilities over the years.
All right. And do you know anyone who has experienced dementia or Alzheimer's disease? If so, could you describe how their thought process is different from adults their age?
Yes, actually, my grandmother had that disease. And I remember when she first started to decline, it got to be, where she just couldn't remember certain things. But then it got to be when I would go visit her, she couldn't even remember who I was. But she could remember things about her childhood vividly, about her old friends, where they used to live, things like that. But she got to the point where she couldn't remember who I was when I would go and visit her.
All right. And in psychology class, we were told that fluid intelligence, which is just new ideas, facts, and reasoning, declines with age, but that crystallized intelligence, which is just previous knowledge and skills, remain relatively the same. Have you experienced this in your life? What are some skills you have that you can still do just as well as you were when you were my age?
Oh, I mean, think about it, right? Like, I haven't ridden a bike in 30 years, but I guarantee you I can jump on a bike and still ride a bike. But you asked me what I ate for dinner 2 days ago, I couldn't even tell you what I ate for dinner, right? So I definitely agree with those things.
All right, and death and grief are a normal part of the human experience. I know that it is something that I will encounter as I get older. What is your perspective on grief? How do you move forward after losing someone close to you?
I mean, everybody grieves differently, right? Some people like to just go back to work immediately just to work through it. Other people, like to take time off. They're the people that like to sit in their bed, and mourn and things like that. I'm more the person of, I just want to get back into my routine. I know it sounds kind of heartless to say that, but I would just rather get back in the normal routine and just move on from it.
All right. Thank you.